Legend of the Loon by Kathy Jo Worgan. Long ago and far beneath an ancient northern sky was a land of many lakes. It was a wooded land where moose and bear and wolves ran easily upon narrow forest trails. In this place, when summer was soft and quiet, twilight soaked up the pines and cedars, bending their reflections into loose forms upon the water. In autumn the forest became a wild feast of color and sound, the sky filled with geese as they flew beneath the approaching night, a hint of moonlight riding on the tips of their wings. In winter it was a land of frost and mist. Every tree stood silent beneath a cover of snow, only to become green and awake again in the spring, when the forest floor was a garden of lady slippers and ferns and newborn fawns. In this land of water and wood was a sky-blue lake lined with stone cliffs. At the northern edge of the lake was a small bay shaped like a kettle, and tucked in its corner was a tiny village with cottages that were simple and square and brown. Most of them sat side by side in two lazy rows not far from the lake. There was one cottage, however, that sat apart from the others. It rested at the edge of the water near cattails and yellow water lilies, and in it lived a very old woman who walked in an odd and clumsy way. Her name was Grandmother Lom. Grandmother Lom had lived in the northern woods as long as anyone in the village could remember. Her hair was as white as a cloud, and her eyes seemed to laugh out loud. Grandmother Lom had two grandchildren who lived in a cottage not far from her. They loved her very much, and they visited her every day. Every morning the three of them walked through the forest picking blueberries and raspberries. The old woman was very slow and awkward, but she knew every trail and path by heart. As they walked, Grandmother Lom taught them how to discover marvelous faces in the knots and cracks and shadows of white birch and jack pine trees. She said finding faces in trees makes you believe that everything in the forest is alive and watching you. And when the sun was high and warm, they would all hold hands and dance around in a circle. Grandmother Lom said the wind in the aspen trees and the sound of sparrows was the music of nature, and the children agreed. But there was one thing the children loved to do more than anything else, and that was to ride with Grandmother Lom in her old white boat. She always rowed slowly so the children could dip their fingertips into the ripples, where the moving water felt silky like the wings of a new moth. When they reached the edge of the shallow bay, which was as far as Grandmother Lom said was safe to go, she would plop her hand into the water and scoop up sunfish or walleye for dinner. The children thought Grandmother Lom was magic. Most often they returned home just as the sky was dimming and crickets were chirping. Grandmother Lom would place large stones in a circle at the water's edge and build a fire out of sticks and logs so they could warm themselves. On one such night the children sat close to her and asked many questions. "Where did you come from, Grandmother Lom?" The old woman smiled and said in a whisper, "I am the daughter of the lakes, lakes the daughter of woods, woods the daughter of wilderness, and wilderness the daughter of song." The children looked very serious, like they didn't understand, so Grandmother Lom went on to explain. "My little ones, that means the grandmothers of 1,000 years live in us, and we live in them. They are the spirit of the wilderness, and it is their love and strength we carry in our dream soul." The children leaned closer. "Dream soul? What is a dream soul?" they asked. "Ah, little ones," she said, "your dream soul is the very center of your heart, where all of the things you believe in and wish for come together like earth and water and sky. It is where all of the beautiful things you love stay forever and ever." With that the children drew even closer to her side. "What does our dream soul look like, Grandmother Lom?" "Imagine a soft white mist rolling over a shining silver lake on a day when the woods are still because there's no wind and no sound. In the center of that mist is one bright place where the sun shines down upon the water. The lake, the mist, and the place, the light of light is what your dream soul looks like, little ones." And then the children grew very curious. "Does everyone have a dream soul?" they asked. "Yes, we all have a dream soul, but we all carry something different in it." "Grandmother Lom, what do you carry in your dream soul?" "Ah, my little ones, my dream soul carries all of the teachings I love, like the sound of white birch trees rattling in the wind, the scent of balsam fir on a crisp morning, and the exact moment when the blue of the lake meets the first gold of night, and it carries you, and my little ones, most of all, it carries you." As Grandmother Lom spoke, the embers of the fire pulsed from orange to black to white. The light of 1,000 stars fell upon the water while northern lights danced back and forth in the sky, setting the lake aglow. The children noticed Grandmother Lom's reflection upon the water. She looked as if she was wearing the night, and the stars on her back, the northern lights as a beautiful necklace, and a kindled flame in her eyes. The children thought she looked beautiful, and they felt warm in her love, knowing that they were the very best part of her dream soul. At that moment, they felt Grandmother Lom in their dream soul too. One day, the grandchildren went to the shore without Grandmother Lom and stepped into the small white boat. They rowed across the shallow bay where perch and minnows darted beneath ripples of water. They laughed, they sang, they rowed a bit here and there, and did not notice how they drifted far beyond the comfort of the shallow bay. And then everything got quiet. The lake was smooth like glass, and sweeps of white and gray mist seemed to pour up from the water. It became fuller and fuller and thicker and higher. Soon they could not see the water, they could not see the land, they could barely see each other. They were frightened, so they began to cry. On shore, Grandmother Lom heard their cries and knew that something was terribly wrong. The old woman hobbled to the lake and stepped in as far as she could go, and began to wave her arms back and forth. She pressed her face to the sky and sang out in a wild, sad cry, "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?" she sang out. Grandmother Lom waved her arms back and forth in the fog. As she did, her cry grew louder and louder, and her words ran close together in a very strange way. "Where are you?" she called. Grandmother Lom kept crying out and waving her arms back and forth, back and forth. Her body was shivering and her eyes were moist with tears. Her voice echoed with tremendous love and worry for her grandchildren. "Where are you?" she cried. The sound rang out across the water. It was wild and strange and sad. Every tree shivered. Every red fox and mink and marten stood motionless at the water's edge. It drew all the people from the village. The grandchildren heard it and knew that it was Grandmother Lom calling them to shore. They tried to row toward her voice, knowing it would take them back into the shelter of the bay. The fog was very thick, so the children listened very carefully, and then suddenly it stopped. The children gasped, afraid they would be lost forever, and just then silence pierced the air and sunlight broke through a small opening in the fog. In one swift motion, a beautiful bird swept overhead. The children had never seen such a creature before, yet it seemed familiar. Its eyes were red like firelight, and its body was the color of a blackened ashes. And on its back were 1,000 stars, and it wore a necklace of northern lights. The bird let out a wild, beautiful cry, and then circled the boat as if to say, "Follow me, follow me." The children followed the bird through the mist. They rowed and rowed as it led them away from the cliffs into the shelter of the bay. As they neared the shore, the bird looked back at them for one moment and then disappeared into the fog. With the boat safely on shore, the children looked around for Grandmother Lom, but she was not there. The children saw the white apron she wore every day lying wet and wrinkled in the sand. At that moment, as the children thought Grandmother Lom was gone, a long, rich sound echoed through the air. It sailed across the water and deep into the center of every living creature and person of the forest. Like magic, it came from the wonderful creature who had saved their lives. It came from Grandmother Lom. And there she was in the mist, a dark, gentle bird floating softly upon the water while birch trees rattled in the wind and the air smelled of a balsam fir. Everyone listened to her song with great joy in their hearts because Grandmother Lom was calling out to the children she loved so much. letting them know they will be part of her dream soul forever. And always her song remains the sound of a wonderful and magical love, the echo of our dream souls, where all that we wish for, all that we believe in, and all that we love is able to stay forever and ever. A song for Grandmother Long. Long ago and far away, in a land of blue, where the woods are dark and deep, damp with morning dew, there lived a woman, some believe very old and gray. She saved her children with a song, and then she flew away. Now upon the northern lakes her dream soul echoes through, in the beauty of her song, "My little ones, where are you?" She sings, "My little ones, where are you?"